Hello, everybody. Welcome to Community Conversations. My name is Courtney Shaw, and I'm the facilitator of the series. And I wanted to let you know this is our last event for the fall term. And we are going to be on hiatus in winter, and we are working on spring. We don't exactly know what's going to happen there yet, but I will keep us posted as best we can. We've got the website at lowercolumbia.edu/conversations. That's probably the best place to go to get updates between now and the spring. So, with that said, I want to welcome today's speaker, and usually I would make a joke along the lines of this speaker needs no introduction, but we have an introduction. So we're going to see how I do on this one. Let's welcome Michael Strayer. He's bold and, yeah, a little old. Started driving Head Start buses at just 18, became a teacher and taught those kiddos at LCC, still young and keen. Off to Evergreen and Whitworth he'd roam, where psychology found him a professional home. 40 years teaching minds at LCC, a therapist, guide, and faculty OG. Now in Rockaway Beach, you'll find him most days, serving meals for seniors in generous ways. Feeding folks in need with kindness and cheer, Michael's still showing up year after year. Please welcome Michael Strayer.
Hi, and thank you. First, I want to thank somebody who is responsible for me being here, and that's David Zimmerman. And he's the son of Jerry Zimmerman, who taught here for many, many years. David and I, a few months ago, had this wonderful talk about male depression, and we shared books with one another. And I thought after that discussion, I have to do more. So when community conversations came up for fall, I thought I should do something there. Well, I've done a lot of reading since then. And I want you to know I'm not depressed, but I have a diagnosis of major clinical depression. So I won't talk too much about myself, but I want you to know that because there's personal experience and knowledge all wrapped up in this as well. So I'll share a little bit of that along the way. Well, let's go ahead and get going. What research knows today is that uh, depression, especially for boys, and it is different for males than females, vastly different. So I will talk about girls, females a little bit, but my primary emphasis is, of course, on men and boys. And so I had just the image of the man, but it really, we know now that it begins in childhood. So we'll really focus on that for a while. But I also want to start here. These were last minute notes, so I put them on my phone. Do you know a man who is sullen, withdrawn, morose? Do you know a man who's often angry, irritable, controlling, and bitter? Do you know a man who is hostile, confrontive, yells, and demeans others? Do you know a man who spends most of his time on his phone or computer at the possible expense of family and work? Do you know a man who's obsessed with sports or gambling or fishing or those are all signs of depression because those are masks. Those are ways to avoid dealing with the feelings of depression. I always have learning objectives, especially for students when I taught, but I'd like you to actually take these things away with you. A basic understanding of depression, why far more males than females mask or hide their depression. Oh, it's going to go on its own, Courtney. How males mask or hide their depression, how vulnerability to depression begins in childhood, to a basic understanding of the boy crisis that there is in America today, and what we can do to help males be more open about their depression and save lives. And I put this, I think this morning, my favorite symptoms are rumination and catastrophizing, and I'll come back to that later, but I put it there just so I would remember. But I promise this won't be too depressing because for at least half the time, we'll be talking about males who just say, I'm fine, everything's fine here, which is very common among men who are depressed. I'm fine. They put on a stoic face, or sometimes they use humor to mask their depression. Okay, do y'all have some paper or something to write on in front of you? Or maybe you have a computer screen in front of you. You can just write a few things down. You're not going to have to turn it in. It won't be graded. But what I'd like you to do is to think about, first of all, I want you to imagine for a minute that you're a parent and you have a couple of young sons, or possibly you're a grandparent and you have a couple of grandsons or great grandsons for that matter. Who is a healthy, affirming adult male? A celebrity, someone that most people would know, that you could point out to those boys and say, this is a really healthy role model. Would you think about that? Would you write it down? Who first comes to mind? Do you need a little more time? You have someone in mind? Now I'd like you to write down the name of one or more healthy, positive adult models that you know in your life, a father, a grandfather, a teacher, that healthy, positive role model. Do you have someone in mind? A friend, someone you could say to your young boys or grandboys, this is who you should be more like. This is a really healthy role model. Do y'all have someone in mind? Which was easier to come up with? Would you just talk to someone next to you? Would you just share that sports star, that healthy role model? Go ahead, just share with someone behind you, next to you, if you want. You don't have to. And share which one was easier to come up with, the negative or positive role model. Would anybody like to share out loud? Just kind of shout it out to your positive role model. Say again, louder. Matthew McConaughey. All right. Anyone else? A healthy, positive role model that's in the media that say LeBron James, Tom Hanks. Good. Go ahead. Great. The two I came up with, Barack Obama and Bruce Springsteen. But which was easier to come up with, the positive role model or the negative one? Most people will say a negative one was easy to come up with, a positive one. And what does that say about our society for boys? You might ask other people in your life these questions. Who wrote this? I am now the most miserable man living. If what I feel were equally distributed to the whole human family, there would not be one cheerful face on the earth. Whether I shall ever be better, I cannot tell. I awfully forebode I shall not. To remain as I am is impossible. I must die or be better, it appears to me. Historical figure. Abraham Lincoln. Now, there is a field of psychology that is historical or forensic psychology, where they go back and look at the letters that were written, observations from others, and try to determine if they meet some kind of mental health criteria. And this is from one of the books in historical psychology. Now, this was before the Civil War, and we know the Civil War was horrendous for Lincoln. He had melancholy, depression. His friends, this was after Mary Todd Lincoln said, hey, I'm not going to marry you. I'm calling off the engagement. And he was destitute. His friends didn't think he would survive. They went in and took care of him. That's what it took for him at that time, is lots of support from other men. Well, he eventually married Mary Todd, but his depression continued through his presidency. Now, I'm briefly going to go over the American Psychological Association definition for depression, just so we're all on the same page here. It's common, it's serious, it affects everything we do, how we think, how we feel, how we interact with people. It goes beyond the sadness and grief that we all will experience at some time. The two things that we all have in common, loss and grief. So at some point in our lives, we will know what this feels like. But at least with that, if you don't have a predisposition for depression, with some time and some work, we will all work through that. It may last for weeks or months, or maybe even a year or so. So that severe grief at a loss is a little different. But we can feel hopeless, emptiness, things that we once enjoyed, we no longer enjoy. The author Andrew Solomon, in his book, The Noonday Demon, says, depression isn't best defined by sadness. It is defined by a loss of vitality. I don't have the motivation I used to have. I can't do the things I used to do. He also says that it's an absence of joy. That when you're depressed, you can't experience joy the way that you used to. It affects our sleep, our appetite, our energy, concentration, how we feel about ourselves. It has a biological basis, genetic. It has a socio-cultural. What are the messages that we get from society, from our family about depression and about being a boy? The biggest cause of depression for both boys and girls is sexual abuse in childhood. That is trauma for them. Some children survive better, but it's because it's been identified and intervention has happened. I'll talk more about that with boys in a little bit. And while it's overwhelming, right, it's treatable. I like to use the metaphor of it's like cancer, in that for many cancers, there is treatment and you can manage it through most of your life. And most cancers start out this way, with treatment, with support. But if not treated, it will kill you. And depression will kill you as well. Now, just for fun, if you've been to see your physician, I got to remember the camera. If you've been to see your physician in the past few years, you have taken this. It is a standard depression screening, a simple one, but it's enough to give your medical doctor a little bit of insight. Now, you can do this on your own. You don't have to do it. But if you'd like to find out what your score is, you could go ahead and do this. Okay? Or you could give it to someone else. Maybe there's someone you know in your family or someone you know. You could just slip this, under their door or anyway. So you simply rate this. There are 9 questions here, and you simply rate it with a 0, 1, 2, or 3. And if my math serves me, which isn't good, 3 times 9 is 27. So you can't get a score higher than 27. And if you do, you should talk to me right afterwards. Feeling down, depressed, or hopeless? Trouble falling or staying asleep, sleeping too much, can't get out of bed? Feeling tired, having little energy? Poor appetite or overeating? You just can't satiate. You can't get full. Feeling bad about yourself, that you're a failure, you've let your family down, friends. Trouble concentrating on things such as reading, newspaper, watching television. Gosh, if you're a college student, how do you survive if you can't focus and concentrate? It's a real struggle. Moving or speaking so slowly that other people could have noticed, or being agitated and speaking more faster than you usually do, people would have noticed that as well. And then thoughts you'd be better off dead, or thoughts of hurting yourself. So for those of you that were doing this, if you tally those numbers up, even if you were doing it in your head, you could get an idea. And here's the interpretation. Not to worry, normal. A little bit of depression in our lives is good for us. It is. If we use it to reflect upon what is going on in our life and to think about ways to manage that. Now, 5 to 9 mild depression, most people will have episodes of this throughout their life. So with just a little bit of management, it will go away. Courtney and I talked about this time of the year in Washington. It's called SAD, seasonal affective disorder, which was the first disorder I was diagnosed with as an adult. Oh, you have SAD. No, I think it's much worse than that. But anyway, moderate depression symptoms that begin to likely interfere with things in your life, relationships, work, school, etc. Moderate to severe, some intervention really needs to happen at this point or with the previous one. You know that it's affecting the quality of your life. You don't have energy. You can't focus. You're unmotivated. You may not, men are less likely to do this, have crying periods and you just don't know why. Severe depression, symptoms profoundly disrupt your activities. It may be that you call in sick often to work. You start cutting family out of your life. Why 2 weeks? If that severe or moderate to severe depression lasts for 2 weeks, you need help, because if you don't, it will get worse. So, I mean, that's the criteria that medicine and psychology has been looking at for a long time, 2 weeks. So you could tell yourself that if I'm not better in 2 weeks, I better go to my doc. And I always say, medical doctor first, not a therapist. Why? Because depression can mask physical illness as well, too. A common one is hypothyroidism. Low functioning thyroid will make you depressed. If something doesn't work, antidepressants don't work for everybody. And it takes at least 2 weeks or longer for antidepressants to kick in. And then for males, it has all kinds of side effects. Libido, sex drive diminishes or drops entirely. I've had men say to me, I'm not going to take antidepressants because then I don't have any sex drive. Wow. I mean, that's just one of the, well, that's the side effect most men talk about anyway. Here is a continuum, a spectrum of mood disorders, just so you get an idea. You can see there in the middle with the circle, and the red arrow is where we function most days, right? It takes me till about 10 o'clock and 2 cups of coffee before I think, okay, I can get something done now. I'm kind of right there in the center. And most of us will move towards the right at many times in our life, loss and grief, etc. Fewer of us will move to the left into mania. And I'm not going to talk too much about that because that's bipolar affective disorder. Right here, a disorder that was been called for 100 years, dysthymia, has been replaced with pervasive or persistent depressive disorder, which means that this is a low level of depression that you just get by with. You know, you keep doing everything. You may start drinking or using drugs or engaging in behaviors just to make you feel better. And if you have this condition for a couple of years, then you meet the diagnostic criteria. Every time when I've done this in classes, I've always had students say, oh, that's what I have. And usually they'll get a diagnosis and be treated, and they're fine in a short period of time. Now, bipolar affective disorder, there's two categories here. Bipolar 1 is that full movement from mania with psychosis to severe depression with psychosis, or from mania to severe depression. And it's a movement back and forth. And the roller coaster is different for every individual. Often there's a triggering event to move into the depressive episode or the mania. Sometimes there is no triggering event. You just cycle. The mania feels so good to some people that once they're treated, they will stop using their drugs because they don't get that cocaine-like high anymore. Bipolar 2 is less severe. It will move back and forth, and you can see the hypomania, hypo meaning lower than, so it's not a full-blown mania. But I also wanted to mention that if you move to the very end, and you may know somebody who has this or had this disorder, that once you move into the psychosis part, that's delusional thinking. So if you move into the mania with psychosis, you think you could be anybody or do anything. You could become president, and maybe you do. On the end, that's pretty grandiose psychosis. But if you move into depression with psychosis, it's very dark. The world's going to end. The rapture will happen tomorrow, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the kind of delusional thinking that takes place in the depression. Bipolar individuals are far more likely to kill themselves than with, I want to say regular depression, normal, far likely, really high percentage rate. Bipolar 1, that drastic movement, is associated with really high genius creative people. So the theory here is if when you're in the depression, you're reflecting upon your life and the world. And then when you move into the mania, you have all of this energy. You'll stay up for all night. You'll stay up for days at a time, creating artwork, writing music, building, whatever it might be. Do you have in mind maybe someone you know? Kurt Cobain, um, excessive use of alcohol and drugs, killed himself in his garage. Jim Carrey has been very open about his struggle with bipolar, and is currently, he thinks, in a kind of a remission period. Jimi Hendrix died of drug and alcohol overdose, but from looking at him, he certainly had bipolar disorder from the records we have about his life. And Vincent van Gogh, you might not have recognized him with the ear, but as historical psychologists look back at his work, it fits bipolar 1 criteria. The percentage of adults that will be diagnosed with depression at some point in their whole life. The total is somewhere around 30%. In 2023, you can see the difference. But what is that? That's almost a 10% jump from just a few years there. Well, COVID happened in between there as well. Men, look at that. It looks like about 20% then of men will be diagnosed in their life at some point. Women, almost 40% of the time in their lifetime will be diagnosed at least once with depression. 34 million men, 61 million women. It is far more pervasive. Many psychologists today say the worst mental health condition that is affecting not just the United States, but the world, and continues to rise, is undiagnosed, untreated depression. I'm going to come back to that, Dave. Thank you. Yes, I'm going to come back to that too, Laura. Here you see suicide rates for men and women, But look at the top there. Men are 3 times to 6 times higher than those for women. Now, from the previous slide, you know, men are far less diagnosed with depression than women are. Another way to look at that, we know that severe depression is a catalyst for suicide. Most people don't know this, but it's a catalyst for violence too. 98% of all teen mass shooters are boys, teen males, young adult males. And forensic psychologists say almost all of them were certainly could have been diagnosed with depression. Now you can see that during the different age groups here, the teen years, 15 to 24, all the way up to our late adulthood senior years, suicide rates among women are flat. What, from around 5% in the teen years, and it gets lower than that once you get into late adulthood. And that might be it. Once your husbands are dead, you feel better. But let's look at males. It is just, to me, it's horrific that this is happening today. Men account for 80% of all deaths by suicide. 50,000 deaths in 2024, just last year. How about drug overdose deaths? Now the numbers will be different. So in 2024, there was a total of 80,391. But men account for 70% of all drug overdoses. Now the number is different because not all overdoses are because of depression, but far more overdose deaths than we realize were a result of depression. Don't have any way of really getting that out unless we would have a diagnosis of everyone who committed suicide. Now, this is depressing, isn't it? Anyway, in the following video, this is a 2-minute video, and I'm looking at my time here. Guess which man is depressed?
Oh, how you doing? You guys? Oh, sorry. Thank you. How you doing? God, it's exciting, isn't it? Hey. Oh, how's the week been? Okay. Yeah. Yep. My things bad around, so I put all of them. Hi. Oh.
Did you guess correctly? The trouble is with us guys is that we will mask our depression so well. We may even know it, but oftentimes men don't know they're depressed. Even if we know it, we go to events, family events, go to games with friends, and we put on that. And we can do that. And then afterwards, there's a big wet bed. These are sperm. These are sperm. Somebody remind me to talk in the mic. These are sperm. XX chromosomes indicates a female delineated sperm, and XY delineates a male chromosome sperm. So here are the XX sperm, female. Here comes the male. Who gets to the ovum first? It'll show one more time. I think. There we go. Okay. Well, you saw it once, so that's enough. Boys are conceived more often than girls upon conception. But there's a higher mortality rate for male fetuses than there are females, which means most miscarriages are males. And even with the higher prenatal mortality, more males survive to be born, resulting in a higher number of male births than females. So why are there more adult women than men? You know the answer already, don't you? Death at every stage of life. And men take on what is called death jobs. Coal mines, lumbering. You can think of all kinds of jobs like that that have a high death rate. Even truck drivers have a higher death rate than many other professions. At almost every stage of life, males have a higher mortality rate and a shorter life expectancy than females. Now, what this means, if there are more chromosomal abnormalities in the male fetus, that also means that male is going to have more problems in life than a female. Let's watch an experiment, another 2-minute video. Which sex is more emotionally vulnerable, baby girls or baby boys? I bet you know the answer already. This is from a video I would highly recommend, Raising Cain. And Catherine Weinberg here at Harvard is going to do the still face exercise.
The experiment will test how infant boys and girls react when their mothers ignore them.
The mother has been instructed to just play with the baby as she normally would for 2 minutes.
Okay.
And then she's going to turn her back to the baby for a few seconds. And then come back and keep what we call a still face, which is basically a poker face. We want to see what the baby does in response.
Okay.
So she looks around the room.
She remains calm and composed. Since 1999, Weinberg has tested hundreds of infant girls. 70% of them react like Lena. And now Catherine brings in an infant boy and his mother.
Just swivel the
Swivel.
chair
Okay.
and then look in that direction,
right.
basically.
Okay.
Do you have any questions at all before we begin?
Are you gonna cue me just when to do what thing?
Yes, I
Okay,
will,
Great.
definitely.
Okay. Do you want to play peekaboo with me? Where's mommy?
Where's enough?
Peekaboo. Where's not?
After Catherine asks the mother to stop interacting, baby Desmond responds very differently than baby Lena.
He's clearly telling her, I don't like this, just stop it.
Many baby boys, like Desmond, become distressed without their mother's attention. They can't calm themselves.
With these babies that we follow today, we're seeing the patterns that you see always.
Yes, definitely.
We don't have a chance. We don't have a chance, do we? So takeaway from this is that you've probably heard, you may have done this yourself if you're a parent, is that you've heard you let babies cry it out. They need to learn to self-soothe or to soothe themselves. Bullshit. Anyway, baby boys may more than baby girls need to be held and comforted. And we think, oh, that's going to make them weak. They won't learn. What happens to children in all kinds of behaviors and emotions is that from the external world, their moms, their dads, when they are comforted, after a while, they assimilate that feeling of comfort into themselves, which becomes their ability to soothe themselves. Those children who are left on their own without being nurtured are going to be much more irritable, cranky, sad, depressed. Girls, you know this, I'm sure too. Girls and boys are treated differently starting in infancy. Boys are touched and handled more roughly by both men and women. And remember, these are not my opinions. This is the research and observation of parents and babies, teachers and babies, etc. Physical punishment is applied more frequently and harshly to boys, and physical punishment is devastating to the developing brain. Emotions are interpreted differently based on the child's sex. Example, with the same behavior, the same facial expression, we interpret it differently on how we perceive the sex to be in the baby. So if it's a baby boy with the same behavior or emotional expression, we'll see that is anger. But in baby girls, the same facial expression or behavior will interpret more often as fear. So we are interpreting what's going on with children wrong based upon, let's say, our culture's preconceptions of male and female children. Boys are more often shouted at, hit, shamed, spoke to, and treated more harshly. And girls, I have a couple of pages that I've written of all the incidents that I had in Catholic school. It's far different then than it is now. A common belief, and it's often unconscious for us, is that boys should be emotionally stronger than girls. They should toughen up, stop crying, don't be a girl, be a man. I'll bet many of you guys heard this as you were growing up, either from a father or a teacher or a coach. What does that do to us? Does the box of traditional masculinity cause feelings of shame and doubt and an inadequacy in boys, leading to depression? And this is from the documentary, The Mask You Live In. 2-minute video.
Would ask every man to think about what age they would ask every man to think about what age they were, what was the context when someone told you to be a man. That's one of the most destructive phrases in this culture, I believe.
Stop crying.
Don't cry.
Stop with the emotion.
Pick yourself up.
Don't be a chump.
Don't be a pussy.
Don't let nobody disrespect you.
Be cool and be kind of a dick.
Always keep your mouth shut. Nobody likes a tattletale.
What a fat
Bitch. You a woman and run your life. Bros come before hoes.
Get laid.
Be a man.
Be a man.
Grow some balls.
So man up.
Man up.
Like a man.
Go, 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 go. Go, 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 go.
Consider the football player. He exemplifies our traditional view of masculinity. Young boys hunger for men to tell them how to be masculine. And men give instructions based on their conceptions of boy psychology.
Boys have to get their aggression out. I don't care what anybody says. They have to get it out. And so let's do it here versus somewhere else.
When boys hear themselves described as aggressive, they try to live up to that expectation.
What do you get to do in football that you don't get to do in normal one?
You get to nail people.
Yeah, what's good about that?
You get to hurt them. You get to kick ass.
Hey, you gotta play tough here. Tad, Rockwell, you gotta start smashing people, okay? Otherwise, they're gonna smash you. Okay?
Men often tell boys that anger is a manly emotion. but feelings of vulnerability and fear are not.
You guys know what pass walking is? Yeah? How come nobody did it? Huh? You gotta go in there and you gotta be tough, but you can't be sissing out, all right?
Maybe that's what the coach's father taught him.
You gotta be tougher than they are. That's the bottom line.
And so it goes from generation to generation.
What is it that makes a man a man?
Not crying over nothing. A man is somebody who's not a wuss, who doesn't cry all the time. Tough, never cry, doesn't cry a lot.
You know, when a 9-year-old boy says that boys shouldn't cry, he may suddenly remember that he himself cried twice that day already. And that raises a doubt which hangs over every boy's head.
Will I ever be man enough? Am I mad enough? Thanks, Courtney. Will I ever be mad enough? Think of those two boys I had you imagine at the beginning. Is this the message that you want them to have? I'm going to move on because I know I'm speaking a little slower. Does traditional masculinity teach boys to be aggressive, controlling, and often violent? Yes. The research shows that traditional masculinity encourages behaviors like aggression and a need for control, while at the same time simultaneously reinforcing suppressed emotional expression. Keep it in, no matter what. Keep those feelings in. Rely upon yourself, not others. Don't talk about it. Be a man. And this kind of message has a devastating effect when you're an adult man and you're still thinking this way. It is often a pathway to severe depression. Which sports do many neurologists suggest waiting until age 14 to start? And this is neuroscientist Chris Nowinski. So he says this is about his kids. He said, these are the ones I'd never let my kids play before age 14.
Still stopping. Oh my gosh.
All of these sports, neurologists say, but I said many neurologists because some say no, not until at least 21 or so. And others say no, never, because adult men can have the same kind of damage. Say again. Was that the one with Will Smith? Yes, about football, National League. Or kill someone. Now, this is what happens. These are called contre-coup concussions. Every time our neck moves, our brain moves inside. You see, it's more like jelly. Our brain is. And when bruising means it's bleeding, it's injured when it moves. So 120 catastrophic injuries, 45 deaths occur annually among middle school and high school boys. Many parents are under the impression that helmets are going to protect their kids. Helmets do not. They protect a fracture of the brain. It doesn't prevent the neck from moving back and forth. So concussions are happen back and forth, but you don't need a concussion. Most neurologists today say it is the hundreds of small impacts over the years. Almost all national football players that are diagnosed with CTE later, I'll come to that in a second, later in their life, have been playing football since middle or high school. And 50% of college and high school students, male, never tell that they have a concussion. Why? They don't get to play. But look at girls. Only 14.9% of them will not tell. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy is what happens with a number of brain injuries over time. So you end up often, we know NFL football players, there's one that just happened recently where he killed someone and then killed himself, have chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And that's in 20s, but it usually, the only way we can really tell is through an autopsy. Look at what the brain looks like, how it's degraded, how it's reduced in size. The neural functioning just isn't working. There's lots of symptoms, and it looks very similar to advanced Alzheimer's disease. Boston University has been doing this research for years, and their studies show, and they depend upon brains that are donated to them. So a family has an NFL football player who has died, and they will donate the brains to Boston University. 91 to 99% of those brains have this advanced CTE. Again, what does that mean? It often means very deep, dark depression. It means lots of alcohol and drug abuse just to ease the pain. And it often means violence and suicide. A high degree of anger. And Courtney tells me it's time to quit. No, I got a couple more minutes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, and I knew this would happen. Okay. What sets boys up? We talked about right from fertility, but what sets them up? Boys compared to girls with different disorders. If you have a learning disorder or behavioral disorder of some kind, you're far more likely to develop severe depression. In dyscalculia, that's math, and both the same number of girls and boys have trouble with math. What does that mean for school? 18% of boys in our public schools are in special ed. 7%, far more than girls, and about 6% of dropouts. And double those rates if you're a Black or Hispanic boy. And this is a question for you, so we'll kind of end here. What's the biggest predictor today for depression in boys and young men? I'd say boys, teens, and young men. The biggest predictor. Anyone have a guess? They want to shout out. Someone has this. I know that you do. That's a good guess. This is the American crisis. It's a world crisis, but really an American crisis for boys today. Boys usually begin in childhood, and I know this was for myself too, with anxiety, and it gets kind of overlooked. Anxiety is a strong predictor for the development of depression. People with depression, such as myself, also 85% of the time have depression, or if you have depression, you'll also have anxiety. In fact, you don't have to pay for anxiety. It just comes along with the depression. Some of you probably know this. Should a 2-year-old be on a screen for 2 hours? Should a 6-year-old be on a screen for 3 hours? Should a 12-year-old be on a screen for 5 hours a day? These are averages, which means some children are on the screen far longer than this. And should teenagers 15 to 17 be on a screen for 6 hours a day? It does not include in school. This means now, when I was a child, I would get up after my parents went to bed so I could watch TV. But then it would go off to a test pattern like at midnight or so. What are kids doing? They're up through the night on their screens if they're allowed or if they've found an extra one somewhere. And what does that mean for them? And I'm going to put this all up here. Even for us as adults, the blue light from a screen actually suppresses melatonin, which is what helps us sleep. And what do most of us as adults do now when we wake up in the middle of the night? Check our phones, right? Scroll through it a little bit. There's a dopamine overload. A good analogy to this is it's like a morphine drip in a hospital that you get to administer yourself. You're feeling a little pain. I'm going to press that button again. Being on a screen releases dopamine. What about a drug? If you use a drug over time, what happens? You've got to take more. In order to get the same relief, you have to take more. So screen time continues to build. Teens have to use it more to get the same kind of effect. There's a numbing or an anesthesia effect for it. If you're on a screen, how can you have friends? How can you build strong relationships with your buddies? Since there is a lot of TikTok videos and YouTube videos, etc., violent video games, there is a masculinity comparison. Oh, I don't have the same muscles. If the boys are watching pornography, they see all of these big penises. This is really anxiety provoking for boys. Boys and girls are cyberbullied about the same amount, but boys don't talk about it. They most likely don't tell, so it's going to affect them more because there's no intervention. And of course, they need to play outside. They need to play with friends. They need rough and tumble play, and they're not getting that when they're on a screen. And it increases family conflict. Put that phone away. Put that tablet away. How many times have I told you? We've argued about this over and over again. How am I doing there, Courtney? Very quickly here. Oh, not that far. We can just look at that. Why do men hide? Most of it's, I've already answered this, and that is it starts in childhood, boyhood, is that we have to be the man we've told we need to be. I need to be stoic and strong and self-reliant. I don't want to be weak. I don't want people to call me gay or a wuss or a girl, so I'm going to be strong. All of that equals failure for them. Provider pressure. I am supposed to be the provider of the family. When I become a man, people are going to depend upon me. That's a big pressure for boys, especially teen boys, to have. Fear of burdening others. I'm not going to burden people with this. If I talk about my depression, I shouldn't have that. I'm weak. And the stigma around seeking therapy. Far less males will seek therapy. I say medicate them, put them in the back seat, and drag them to somewhere to have a little therapy. Okay. I've already gone over this a little bit. Emotional disguise, I'm fine. How are you doing, Michael? I'm fine. You just suffered this. How you doing? Fine. I'm fine. Be stoic. I'm the one, right? I use humor all the time to put up a mask, keep people at just a little bit of a distance. If I'm being funny, if I'm making something witty, people aren't going to ask how I'm doing because I must be happy if I'm telling jokes. I'm sorry, I'm disclosing so much about me. Anyway, excessiveness in anything, and I see this all the time. Always on the screen, sports, gambling, what else? with complete withdrawal. Where is they're always in the garage working. That was my father, never with the family. High substance abuse. When we look at excessiveness, anything that is beginning to affect, like if it's drugs, alcohol, even cannabis, etc., anything that keeps men away from their family, away from their work, it begins to affect the dynamics of the relationship. Those are strong signs of a depression. If I didn't know what I know now, I would use drugs every day just to feel better. Do I do that? Yes, I do that. They're antidepressants, but maybe a few from the street. A man whose symptom shifts, like you're wondering, what's going on with, you're angry, now you're sad, now you're irritable. My wife knows that I'm spiraling into a depression before I do, because I become grouchy and irritable. And she says, Michael, you're being grouchy. And to me, that's a nice flag. I say, okay, I need to do something about that. And of course, this affects families so much, relationships with children, with grandchildren. How can you be an effective male parent, an effective male grandparent or uncle if you're dealing with all of these depressive issues? I'm wrapping up. Let's just do them all. Well, I'll do one at a time. These were the things I wanted you to take with you, but these are the things I take with me. We must nurture young boys far more than we have from the time that they're infants, knowing that they need that. We must recognize that anxiety in boys is the strongest sign of developing depression in childhood and teens. Boys begin learning how to mask their feelings from a very young age, so we must be very open and encouraging of them to talk about what they're feeling. Give them names for those feelings. Give them lots of information. That's helpful to know what's going on with my body and my brain. We must openly talk about the risks of brain injuries in sports and play activities and discourage some. That's going to be really hard for a lot of parents. But most parents, I believe, really don't know how severe that this is and what kind of long-term effect that it'll have on their boys. We must encourage and affirm boys, teen males, and men to share their feelings, fears, and anxieties. And sometimes we may have to shake them gently or give them some words to work with. Men don't have as many words as women do. Schools must change. Many of the researchers here say our current school structure works against boys. That's why they're doing so poorly. This is just one suggestion, and there are many for changing it, is that boys should be red-shirted. Boys should not be allowed to, let's say, enter kindergarten at 5. They should be 6. Because girls mature emotionally, their brain matures, it grows faster than boys almost across the entire lifespan. That would give them a head start. As men, grandpas, dads, we have to do a better job. Knowing this now, we can start. I owe it to my sons. I owe it to my grandchildren. I owe it to my nephews to work on myself so that I become a role model for them. That their parents might say, like maybe my son and his wife would say, because I have 2 grandboys, Grandpa Michael is a really good role model for. That's my goal in my senior life, is to be a better man and a better role model. Oh, you think it's over? It is. Now, do remember, this is going to be as a YouTube video in just a few days. And so all of this material is there for you to steal. Here are the 4 books on the top are ones I highly recommend, especially for men. And I would always say start with I Don't Want to Talk About It by Terrence Real. It is a sledgehammer for men. I know I sent it to a nephew and he said, Michael, this is so bleak. Yes, it's painful to read for a man, but it's so enlightening. And the other ones are really good. And the 4 in the bottom are documentaries. I think you can find all 4 on YouTube. And if you still have some questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you. There's my email with the line through it, mjsretired@protonmail.com. Please write me with any of your questions. I can, I will, I don't, but I can easily, thanks for the suggestion. I will put the transcript together and make that available. And if you email me, I'll send it to you. Okay.
Thank you very, very, very much. And thank you to all of you for coming today, or if you've come to many in this series, thanks for coming all the times you did. And hopefully I'll see you again in a future quarter. Take care, everybody.